As Americans, we cannot allow this to continue.
August 2025 turned the Eastern Pacific into a battlefield. Smuggler boats racing north from Colombia and Ecuador thought they would slip through the cracks like always. They didn't. Waiting for them was Operation Pacific Viper, the most aggressive Coast Guard drug surge ever. Over 100,000 pounds of cocaine were seized, 34 interdictions, 86 smugglers captured. One cutter offloaded a record-breaking 76,000 pounds, worth nearly $500 million. When the Coast Guard says they're accelerating, they mean armed helicopters blowing out engines, P-8 aircraft tracking targets across 200,000 square miles, and cutters burning smuggler boats to the waterline. This is the untold story of how America's maritime warriors shattered entire trafficking routes in just 3 months. The surge begins early August 2025. Inside Joint Interagency Task Force South in Key West, Coast Guard commanders confronted a harsh truth. Cartels were moving record amounts of cocaine through the Eastern Pacific, and more than 20,000 Americans were dying every year from cocaine-related causes. The traffickers were faster, smarter, and operating in overwhelming numbers. Washington's response was immediate. Operation Pacific Viper would be a surge unlike anything the Coast Guard had ever launched. Multiple Legend-class national security cutters, medium-endurance cutters, Navy destroyers carrying Coast Guard law enforcement teams, P-8 Poseidon surveillance aircraft, and armed helicopter units would flood the Eastern Pacific at the same time. A Legend-class cutter is a 418-foot floating headquarters with advanced command and control systems, designed for long deployments in the harshest conditions. These weren't simple patrol vessels. They were mobile war rooms, and they were sent out with a single objective: shut down the cocaine pipeline before it reached American shores. The operation averaged 1,600 pounds of cocaine seized every day, but that number hides the reality on the water. High-speed chases in rough seas, smugglers dumping cargo, helicopters firing precise shots to stop fleeing engines. Boarding teams confronting traffickers are prepared to fight. These cutters weren't patrolling, they were hunting. The first major strike, August 8, 2025. South of Mexico, the USC G.C. Hamilton stopped a smuggling vessel and seized more than 4,000 pounds of cocaine along with 3 detainees. It was the first major strike of Operation Pacific Viper, and only the beginning. 3 days later, the pace escalated. A Coast Guard law enforcement team aboard the Navy destroyer USS Sampson intercepted another boat south of Mexico. The smugglers tried to dump cargo and flee, but a helicopter shooter disabled their engine with precise fire. 2 suspects were detained, and more than 1,300 pounds of cocaine were seized. This became the defining tactic. The precision required for these helicopter engine disabling shots is far more intense than most people realize. Each aerial gunner trains for months to place a single round into an engine block bouncing across the open ocean. Shooters aren't firing from a stable platform. They're firing from a vibrating helicopter, aiming at a boat moving at 40 to 60 knots, while the aircraft itself is being buffeted by wind coming off the water. Every shot must be perfect. One miss can ricochet, endanger the crew, or cause a fire that kills the smugglers the Coast Guard is legally required to save. These operations show the quiet professionalism behind each interdiction. Smugglers know what these helicopters mean. Many try evasive patterns, swerving in tight circles or zigzags to break the gunner's sightline. Some throw fuel barrels overboard to make the sea slick, hoping the helicopter hesitates to avoid a crash. Others feign surrender and then suddenly accelerate. But against radar tracking, infrared sensors, and trained shooters, none of those tactics last long. Every operation ends the same way: a stalled engine, a drifting boat, and a tactical team boarding within minutes. The boarding operations are their own high-risk environment. Teams approach at speed in rigid-hull inflatable boats, often in rough waves created by the chase. They climb ladders or jump directly on deck, never knowing if the smugglers are armed, panicked, or hiding weapons. Many smugglers try to sink their own vessel by punching holes in fuel tanks or throwing their remaining cargo overboard. The Coast Guard must secure the suspects while preventing the boat from rolling over and trapping people underwater. Some vessels are so overloaded with cocaine that they ride dangerously low in the water. One boarding report described bales stacked almost to shoulder height, the weight making the boat unstable. Another case involved a smuggler who jumped overboard mid-chase, thinking sharks were preferable to prosecution. The Coast Guard rescued him anyway. The night operations are even more extreme. Crews often detect smuggling boats only as faint heat signatures against the dark ocean. The air smells like engine exhaust. The sea is pitch black. The only light comes from moon glow bouncing off whitecaps. Yet the results remain the same. Engine disabled, vessel stopped, suspects detained, drugs seized. Operation Pacific Viper's early weeks weren't random successes. They were proof that the Coast Guard could run precision interdictions back-to-back at a pace that cartels never believed possible. Helicopters tracked fleeing boats, placed accurate rounds into their outboards, and stopped them in seconds. No standoffs, no drawn-out chases, just controlled and immediate interdictions. On August 16th, the USCGC Stone interdicted a smuggling vessel south of the Galapagos, disabled its engine from the air, detained 3 traffickers, and seized more than 3,500 pounds of cocaine. After removing the suspects and cargo, the crew set the vessel on fire. Officials later said it prevented hazards at sea, but the message was unmistakable. Nothing was returning to the cartels. The next day, August 17th, Stone struck again, seizing more than 4,000 pounds of cocaine. 2 days after that, on August 19th, Stone intercepted yet another vessel carrying nearly 3,000 pounds. In under 2 weeks, Operation Pacific Viper had turned the Eastern Pacific from a trafficking corridor into a Coast Guard hunting ground. The record-breaking offload, August 25, 2025, Port Everglades, Florida. That morning, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Hamilton offloaded over 76,000 pounds of illegal drugs worth $473 million. The haul included more than 61,000 pounds of cocaine and over 14,000 pounds of marijuana. It was the largest drug offload in Coast Guard history. The scope was staggering: 38 tons of narcotics, 19 interdictions across the Eastern Pacific and Caribbean. 19 times tactical teams boarded smuggling vessels in the open ocean and won. With a lethal dose of cocaine as small as 1.2 grams, the offloaded amount represented enough to potentially kill more than 20 million people. This was not a routine bust. It was the prevention of a humanitarian disaster. Rear Admiral Jeffrey Novak said the Hamilton's offload proved the success of Operation Pacific Viper and sent a clear message to the cartels that the Coast Guard owns the sea. And Hamilton's crew was not finished. During their 2 months at sea, they personally interdicted more than 47,000 pounds of cocaine. Constant operations, constant pressure. Their success was powered by advanced surveillance. P-8 Poseidon aircraft used synthetic aperture radar to track small vessels across vast ocean distances, feeding real-time intelligence directly to cutters and helicopter crews. Smugglers could not hide, and they could not outrun the response. The Coast Guard controlled the entire intelligence picture. Stone sets a new record. From September through November 2025, while Hamilton captured national headlines, another cutter was quietly rewriting Coast Guard history. On November 19, the crew of the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Stone offloaded more than 49,000 pounds of cocaine at Port Everglades. It was the largest amount ever seized by a single cutter in one patrol, with a value of more than $362 million. The haul resulted from 15 interdictions in the Eastern Pacific. Some nights, Stone completed 3 interdictions before sunrise. Captain Ann O'Connell, the commanding officer, said she was proud of her crew's performance and noted that the offload reflected the Coast Guard's heightened posture against narco-terrorism and transnational criminal organizations. Officials added that the quantity of cocaine seized held the potential to fatally overdose the entire population of Florida. But the real achievement was proving that cutters could sustain an intense operational tempo for months without their effectiveness dropping. Captain O'Connell explained the process clearly. Armed helicopters stopped the smuggling vessels. Smugglers were brought aboard as detainees. The drugs were seized, and the suspects were handed over to Ecuador or their home nations for prosecution. Most of the cocaine was leaving Colombia and Ecuador aboard 30 to 40-foot go-fast boats with triple outboard engines capable of 60 knots. These vessels could outrun many ships, but not helicopters, not advanced radar, and not the coordinated net operation Pacific Viper put in place. One interdiction showed the chaos smugglers faced. Photos from a news release revealed multiple seizures, including a case where a smuggling boat capsized on September 17th. The crew of the USCGC Seneca pulled survivors from the water while recovering bales of cocaine floating across the Pacific. The final tally. October 15, 2025. The Department of Homeland Security announced a milestone that stunned even veteran observers. Since the launch of Operation Pacific Viper in early August, the United States Coast Guard has seized more than 100,000 pounds of cocaine in the Eastern Pacific. The full numbers showed the scale of the effort. 34 interdictions, 86 people were taken into custody. An average of 1,600 pounds of cocaine is intercepted every single day. Rear Admiral Jeffrey Novak called the achievement remarkable and said that when the Coast Guard talks about accelerating counter-narcotics operations, it means deploying a maritime fighting force that hunts traffickers across the Eastern Pacific and dismantles their networks in real time. But the impact went deeper than raw numbers. Officials noted that most narcotics destined for the United States are stopped at sea, underscoring the importance of maritime interdiction. By saturating the region with cutters, aircraft, and tactical teams, the Coast Guard forced cartels to rethink their entire logistics chain. Commander Nathan Moore said that in fiscal year 2025, the service seized nearly 510,000 pounds of cocaine, the most in its history. Operation Pacific Viper alone accounted for almost a fifth of that total. Advanced technology played a major role. Uncrewed aerial systems like Shield AI's MQ-35 VBAT, deployed aboard the Cutterstone, helped locate vessels at night and expanded the Coast Guard's ability to track smugglers across vast ocean areas. At a press conference, Commander Moore delivered a direct message to cartel leaders. The Coast Guard owns these waters, and anyone attempting to traffic narcotics through them will be found and stopped before reaching American shores. Operation Pacific Viper proved the Coast Guard can dismantle trafficking routes with relentless force and precision. Dozens of smugglers were captured, and more than 100,000 pounds of cocaine were seized across the Eastern Pacific. The cartels lost millions, and the ocean they once owned became Coast Guard territory. If this surprised you, hit subscribe and tell us which interdiction shocked you most.